guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. As per usual, I have my wicked candle in here, making the whole room smell like caramel apples. I also have my sparkle cup in here because I know I'm going to get tongue-tied during this video because it's already happening. I'm already like stumbling over my words. So I'm going to be reading a fictional no sleep story. So this is from the author objective_Sunday_489, and they actually have a podcast also on Spotify you guys can go check out. So their Spotify podcast is Once Upon a Terror. So I will list all of the information down below so you guys can go check out this author's work and see all of their other stuff, because they make stories based off of the dreams they have. So that's really freaking creepy. So I'm very excited. The story that I want to read today is called I Pissed Off Nature, and it is a very, very creepy story, and I'm very excited to just jump on into it. So let's do that. I lived in the woods for the majority of my life. The city, even suburbia, was too loud for me. But being surrounded by trees and nature calms me to the extent that nothing can replace my small, cozy cabin in the woods. I built it myself. Most of my family asked if it was going to become an Airbnb, but they seemed shocked when I told them I built it for myself. I live alone, and they worry about me. They've tried to then persuade me to find a roommate or even a girlfriend, but there was no point to finding someone because I built the cabin as a studio layout. Why should I bring someone else into my home when I am perfectly comfortable with living alone? One day, my grandmother was visiting me, and before she arrived, I laid the table with a kettle pre-boiled for tea and put out some bite-sized sandwiches. She was very old-fashioned and always had a cup of tea in front of her. I made sure to make sure that she felt at home. A few minutes later, she knocked on my door lightly. I answered, and I welcomed her inside. "You live too far out here for me to be making this trip," she complained, as I welcomed her into my home. "I can always come to you, Grandma," I chuckled, and I had told her this multiple times whenever she visited me. She shooed her hand away, disagreeing. "Nonsense. Besides, I have something I'd like to talk to you about." She immediately made her way over to my dining room table as soon as her eyes set on the kettle and teacups. I pulled out the chair for her and she sat, the wood creaking below her. I sat across from her and began prepping the tea. "Tea?" I asked, ready to pour. "Yes, please. Do you have Earl Grey?" I always had Earl Grey. It was the only tea she would drink. Earl Grey, a drop of cream, and no sugar. I prepped her cup while she chatted with me. "So, you said you had something you wanted to discuss." I began drinking my tea as I sat back in my chair relaxing. She nodded and brought her tea up to her lips, letting the steam fill her nostrils. "Yes. First, how long have you lived out here?" I had to think back for a moment. "About 5 years now." "And you enjoy it?" she asked with an accusatory tone. "Yes," I smiled firmly. "And you haven't had any issues?" I tilted my head to the side. "What do you mean?" She took a long sip of her tea before answering. "I'm surprised you haven't come in contact with the spirits that dwell within these woods." My grandmother was always a spiritual person. She believed in jinxes and bad luck and karma. She wasn't exactly a witch, but she also wasn't your typical Christian. "What spirits?" I decided to indulge her. "These woods are protected by spirits, and if you respect them, they will leave you be. But mark them or harm their land, and you will be cursed." Well, I've never run into anything like that, and I don't feel like I've disrespected anything. I didn't believe what she said, but there was no point in disagreeing with her. Even if I did disagree, she would still warn me of this and push it even more. The forest lives and breathes life, and the spirits protect it. But if you disturb them, you may be visited by one of the tree spirits. Some also call it a stick spirit because of the way it looks. Tall, slender, and, well, like a stick. "And what does it do?" I asked. She beamed at my curiosity. "The stick spirit is a spirit of tree that roam these woods. It is not attached to any particular tree specifically, but protects all of them, for it moves because the trees cannot." She explained this. She was on her second cup of tea now and began eating some of the sandwiches I had laid out. What was I saying? Oh yes, the stick spirit. "The reason I worry for you is because I felt a presence outside your cabin. Something watching you. Watching your cabin." "Wonderful. I wouldn't be getting any sleep tonight. I feel you may have provoked this spirit, and I want to show you how to repair your relationship with it." I did not have a relationship with the so-called stick spirit, but apparently I did now. To get the stick spirit to forgive you, you must leave a pile of pine needles and dirt along with a drop of your blood at the front door. The spirit will come and see your offering and forgive you. But if you don't, Rumor and folklore goes that the spirit will haunt you in your sleep every night until you die. Her silence then told me that she had finished explaining. She shifted in her chair, the woods creaking again. My back is starting to hurt and I think I'm going to go home now and lie down, she said. Of course, Grandma. I helped her up and outside to her car. Are you going to be all right driving yourself home? I'm fine. Don't worry about me. But do what I told you. I can sense the spirit watching. Yes, Grandma. She started her car and backed out of my driveway. I went back inside. What on earth was she talking about? A stick spirit? But I was a little curious. I went back inside and I pulled up my laptop. I began Googling Washington Forest stick spirits. Several articles came up and I clicked on an image of what my grandmother described. A pile of pine needles and dirt. Most of the articles claimed the spirit and legends are of fairy tales you tell to your kids to make them behave. I scoffed and I shut my laptop. Just as I thought, it was complete bullshit. That evening, I watched some Criminal Minds before going to bed. I love crime shows and I could always tell who the murderer was before they caught them. There was also a lot of seasons which kept me hooked. Eventually, I felt my eyes grow heavy and decided to turn in for the night. I changed into my pajamas and I crawled into bed, already warm from me sitting and watching TV. I turned out the light and eventually fell asleep. And no, I did not leave out pine needles, dirt, or my blood at the front door. My dreams that night were nothing short of horrifying. I was even convinced I wasn't dreaming. I could hear the wind blowing through the trees outside my house. The trees creaked and an owl hooted in the distance, harmonized by the crickets. My room was dark, except for the moonlight spilling down at an angle onto my wooden floor. I remember lying in bed, having to pee, so I got up and I used the washroom before returning to bed. But when I came back to my bedroom, something in the window caught my attention and I froze. A face. A face was staring at me. And it was not human. You know that Scream mask? Imagine that, but brown and on a stick figure. You know how kids draw people? Yeah, that's what was staring at me through the window. But its head was tall and skinny, like a stick. I didn't move, but I knew it saw me. I didn't dare take a step forward. My heart pounded in my chest. Sweat clammed my palms. What do? Do I retreat to the bathroom? Do I run? Do I invite it in for fucking tea? No, this thing wasn't real. I was definitely dreaming. I'm going to ignore it and go right back to bed. I broke eye contact with the imaginary figure and I walked back to my bed. As I lifted my leg to get into bed, there was a loud smack against my window, like something took a whip and hit it against the glass. I froze again and looked at the window. The stick figure was still there and its face turned to watch me walk to my bed. It did it again, and this time, I saw it do it. Again and again, over and over, until the glass began to crack. I huddled under my covers hiding, like a child scared of a monster under its bed, except this thing was outside my window. I began crying and I yelled, "What do you want? Leave me alone." It kept hitting the window like it was throwing a temper tantrum, and then suddenly, it stopped. I stayed frozen under my sheets and even dared to breathe. I didn't know how much time had passed, but I watched the color of my sheets light up and slowly the sun rose. I was up all night, frozen in fear, afraid of something trying to break into my house. Slowly, I pulled the sheets from over my head and I looked at the window. It wasn't broken and there was nothing there. I must have dreamed it, didn't I? I continued to do more research throughout the day and eventually decided to take a walk through the woods to get some fresh air. I followed a local trail and I walked for about 30 minutes or so before turning around to walk home. The fresh air cooled my skin as birds flew above me. I was relieved and beginning to forget about last night, until a branch snapped behind me, which made me jolt. It was especially unnerving since it sounded similar to the noises I heard in my sleep. I quickened my pace a bit. The fresh air was nice and all, but I didn't need this much. I could stay inside for the rest of the day. Everything I needed was inside my cabin. As I walked home faster, now at a small jog, I didn't turn around. The snapping sounds became more frequent and closer on my heels. I was full on running now. You know those horror movie scenes of the protagonist running through the middle of the woods at night, being chased by a serial killer? This felt like that, but in broad daylight, and I didn't know what was chasing me, but I had a suspicion. Was I really dreaming last night? Or was the spirit really mad at me and not going to let me be? Approaching the view of my cabin, I exhaled and I ran faster to the porch. I almost tripped on the last stair when my eyes laid on the sight in front of me. At my doormat was a bunch of sticks, and they were arranged to spell, "I'm watching." I scrambled the sticks around with my foot, and I rushed to unlock my door and go inside. I slammed the door behind me, breathing heavily. I was safe here. Nothing could harm me in my cabin. When suddenly, my phone rang in my pocket, and I hurried to answer it. It was my mother. "Daniel, it's Mom. Something happened to your grandmother. She didn't come home last night, and they found her car on the side of the road. I need you to meet me at this address that I just texted you." "Is she okay?" I asked. "I'm on my way." She told me to hurry, and she hung up, and I was in my car shortly after. I drove to the address my mother texted me in silence, questions rolling through my mind. What could have possibly happened to my grandmother that would cause her not to make it home? My question was shortly answered when I arrived at the scene. Her car was on the side of the highway, surrounded by police cars. I pulled into the gas station across the street and parked by my mom's car. My mother hugged me when I got out. I asked her what had happened, but she wouldn't look at me. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying. "Someone murdered her." She pulled out her phone. "I warn you, it isn't pretty." I took the phone from her. The blood drained from my face completely when I saw the image. My grandmother was in her front seat, her head lolled to the side in death. I knew to believe what my grandmother had warned me about now. She was right about the spirits, because sticks were protruding from her eye sockets. I swiped to the next photo, and it was even worse. On the dash, spelled in twigs, were the words, "I'm still watching." And that's how they end the story. So that author said that that was based off of a dream. That is fucking terrifying. So I don't believe there is going to be a second part. I did ask that author if they were going to update that story or if this was going to be a series, and she said no, that all of her stories are based off of her dreams. So that is the end of that story, but that is freaking terrifying. And I really want that author to update that story because I want to know what happens. Does Daniel ever appease the stick spirit? Does he ever leave the pile of pine needles and blood on his doorstep so the stick figure stops haunting his dreams and killing his family members? I don't know. That story is freaking creepy, and I absolutely loved how that author wrote that story. It was very, very, very well written and very creepy. So I'm gonna read one more story. So this was on my last story that I read, so about the woods again. So we do have a theme. It is going to be another woods creepy video. So they said, "This reminds me so much of something that happened to me when I was 7, and I stay the hell away from the woods ever since. I was out with my friend playing in her grandparents' yard most of the day. We spent almost every day together doing that. But this is the only day anything strange happened. It was getting dark, and it was midsummer. My nan was after telling me to come home when it gets dark when I went down and had lunch at her house before going back out with my friend. It wasn't completely dark, so I wasn't in a rush to get back home. We went back to my grandparents as we wandered closer to the woods and started making mud pies. I remember it getting dark really fast out of absolutely nowhere, and I kept hearing a whistling come out of the woods. My friend didn't hear it though, and I thought she was messing with me, so I tried to get her to go closer, but she wouldn't go near the woods. I could hear it plain as day. My nan would often whistle, and it sounded like a tune she would sing. Then I hear my nan's voice calling out my name with so much fear in her voice from deep inside the woods. It made my hair stand up, and I froze for a second. Yet again, my friend heard nothing. I didn't know what to do because she sounded so scared, and it was my nan's voice for sure, but I knew for a fact she was at home. She would have had to pass us to go into the woods. We would have seen her, and she would never be up in there anyway regardless. I went closer to the woods, but not completely, because I had no idea how her voice could be mimicked like that, so it had to be her, even though logically it didn't make any sense. The moment I got closer to the trees, I got really tired, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I sat down because I couldn't physically move away from them. I just wanted to sleep. And my friend came over and was poking me, eventually dragging me from the woods. And just like that, the sky got a little brighter, and the tiredness left me. I went home really quickly after that, and I told my nan what had happened. She said it must have been the fairies and never to go back there again at night. I'm safe to say I listened and I never did it again. I'm still not sure what it was to this day." Well, your grandmother told you it was the fairies. I fully believe that the spiritual world exists, that there is fairies and other creatures deep inside the woods that we don't know about. We have so much folklore on fairies and all of these different creatures in every type of culture ever. So if you don't believe in fairies, I think you're wrong, because I definitely believe in other dimensions. I believe in other worlds. I believe in the fairy world completely. They are not something to mess with, and that is so creepy. The freaking hair on my arms is standing straight up because there are so many accounts of people telling stories that are very similar to this, where they hear a voice mimicked from the woods and then they get really, really tired and they can't move away from the trees. And thankfully they're with somebody that can pull them away, and then all of a sudden they feel normal again. That is absolutely bizarre. That is so creepy, and I really, really want to read a story of somebody actually investigating. I know you shouldn't, and that absolutely sounds so dangerous, and you're probably gonna get transported to another dimension. But I would really like to know if somebody actually ever had a mimic come from the trees and they did go investigate, and to see what actually is out there and what happens and to record it, because that is so freaking interesting. But at the same time, please don't do that, because you will probably get eaten by a fairy or a bear. But this is the end of the video. I know you guys have left me so many comments saying that you want longer videos, but like I've said, my camera records in 4K and it overheats if I do too long of videos. Plus, I'm trying to find longer stories for you guys, but you guys haven't really been sending me any of your guys' stories in lately, so I don't have any of your guys' personal stories to read. So if you guys have any creepy stories that you want me to read on the channel, feel free to send them to me either over my email, over my Instagram, and I will definitely read your guys' personalized creepy stories, because I love reading your guys' personalized stories. It just adds like a layer of more creepiness to it when it's actually happened to you guys and it is a true story and it's not just a fictional story. Unfortunately, the fictional stories tend to be the ones that are the longer videos that I can post, and a lot of you guys have said that you don't really care for the fictional ones, but that you also want longer videos. So I can't really do both. If you want a longer video, it has to be kind of a fictional one, unless I find an author that has written about their crazy haunted house, and honestly, there isn't a whole lot of those stories on Reddit at the moment that I have found. So if you have any creepy stories that you want to share with the channel, please feel free to email me or message me, and I will definitely read your guys' creepy occurrences. And this is where I'm going to end the video. So if you guys made it to the end of the video, leave me your favorite in the woods emoji. We're going with the in the woods theme again, and it really helps if you guys leave a comment, if you guys like my video, if you guys share it around. It really does help the channel so much, because something changed with the algorithm and now my videos are not being promoted as much as they used to be. So please help me, please like this video, please comment on this video, and I will definitely reply or at least heart every comment that you guys leave. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.